G'day everyone, Kate here from the Narrate team. This week Caleb leads us into an intriguing conversation about doubt.
Hello. Hi, friends. It's great to be with you here this morning. If this is your first time, thrilled that you're joining us as well. So to get started this morning, want to be completely honest with you. This morning is a little bit self-absorbed because the conversation that I want to have with you for the next 30 or so minutes is something that I've been struggling with for a while now. And the last month especially, I've really kind of faced this struggle head on. And so I'd like to just explore it with you. And that I think no matter where you're at in life, you'll be able to relate to it a little bit. And so to give you context of kind of where my brain's been at, we'll start about a month ago. I had the opportunity in the beginning of July to help lead a summer camp along with a handful of other churches around the state. And so it's a camp for students in the Beartooth Mountains, which is a beautiful area. And so it's 2 weeks. First week we had high school students, and that was an absolute blast. The second week we had middle school students, and that was a ton of fun as well. And for me, the favorite part about the whole camp experience was just getting to be able to have some one-on-one conversations with students and also leaders, and getting to be able to talk with students kind of about life and some of my struggles and where I'm headed at in life, and getting to be able to hear some of their struggles and some of the messy stuff that's going on in their lives, and then to talk about decisions and choices that they're facing and that they're going to have to make, and just begin to navigate life with them, and truly believe that within those 2 weeks that life changed really happened with students, and getting to be able to show them that Jesus desires them to begin to think differently and attune their thinking to his thinking. So that was great. And also just be able to get to enjoy the whole camp experience, of the blob and the zip lines, and there was no cell phone reception, so that was awesome for 2 weeks. And they had the snack shack, which they had like this thing called the walking taco, and I had it every night. It was so good. It was like crushed Doritos with chili and nacho cheese and sour cream and lettuce, and it sounds horrible, but it was so good. You should try one. I'm getting hungry thinking about it. But just, that was great. And those of you that have ever been to a camp know that, by the end of the week, you're exhausted, and you're ready to go home. You're ready to, pass out on your bed for a day straight, and you had a ton of fun, but you're just exhausted. And so you can imagine 2 weeks of camp back to back, you're exhausted, and especially for me of waking up early and staying up till 2 a.m. isn't just very sustainable for me for very long, because I'm that old guy that likes to go to bed at 9:30. Like, that's my prime time, and so staying up till 2 a.m, like corralling kids to get in bed and to stay in bed, like I get tired of that after a while. And then to make things worse, I'm a big introvert. And if I don't get my alone time, I'll admit it, I become a crappy person. And those of you that know me know that to be true. And if you're an introvert, you can relate to that a little bit, right? Like if you don't get your alone time, if you don't get to be with just you, you get to become kind of crappy. And all of you extroverts, you're like, yeah, you introverts are horrible people. To which I say, yes, leave us alone. I'm just kidding, but don't leave us alone. But you know what I mean? Like, we just need our own space sometimes. And so 2 weeks of camp, not being able to get away and kind of stuck with the same people, like, I get overstimulated. And so I get home and I'm exhausted and drained emotionally and physically and spiritually and relationally. And I don't know about you, but when I get drained emotionally and physically and spiritually, I get overwhelmed in life, and I get stressed out about life. And that overwhelming feeling and that stress feeling then leaks into my relationships, my friendships, into my job, and into how I live life, and the decisions and the choices that I make in life. And I don't know about you, but I have a tendency in the midst of feeling overwhelmed and stressed out in life, I begin to doubt about life, about what I'm doing, if I'm headed in the right direction, if I'm doing the right things, begin to doubt relationships, even begin to doubt convictions and beliefs. And I even begin to say things like, hey, Caleb, it's one thing to say that you're a follower of Jesus, to say that you're a Christian, but actually following following that all out is something completely different. I mean, it's one thing for you to say that you believe in Jesus and that you're a follower of Jesus, but actually living as Jesus lived life is completely different. In fact, it's extremely difficult. I mean, it's one thing to say you're a follower of Jesus, but actually loving people as Jesus loved people is something completely different. In fact, it's extremely tough because, I mean, that person is an idiot sometimes, and the last thing you want to do is hang out with them and show that person compassion and grace and patience. The last thing you want to do is love that person. I mean, it's one thing to say you're a follower of Jesus, but actually holding your tongue is something completely different, because all you want to do is just rip into that person and let that person have it and tell them how you really feel about them, right? I love how the comedian says it. He said, I had the right to remain silent, but I did not have the ability to, right? You ever happen to that ever happened to you in conversations? I mean, it's one thing to say you're a follower of Jesus and to know the right thing to do, but actually doing the right thing, something completely different, and it's hard. I mean, I know the right thing for me to do is not to mess around with sex before I'm married, but I mean, sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes I don't want to. Sometimes I don't want to resist. Like, that's not the feeling. I know the right thing for me to do is to be an honest business person, not to cheat on my taxes, but if I moved that number there and said I made that much instead of that much, I could get that much money back, and I wouldn't have to pay that much, and then I could pay off some debt, and I'd be sitting really well financially. I know the right thing for me to do as a Jesus follower is not to go on that website, but I just had a long day and I'm feeling lonely, and I know that in the moment it'll bring some satisfaction. I know the right thing for me to do as a parent is not to yell at my child, but my child just did that, and I told them not to do that, and they did that anyways, and I'm so upset, I'm so annoyed with them, I just want to let them have it. We have these convictions and these beliefs, these things that we know to be true. But I don't know about you, but sometimes I have this echo in my mind, and the echo in my mind is it really worth it? Like, are my convictions and beliefs, the things that I know to be true and things that I know to be right, are they really worth it? For you, maybe you grew up with these convictions and these beliefs. You went to a church, and the church taught you what was true and what was false. Maybe you grew up with parents that instilled in you these convictions and these beliefs of what was right and what was wrong. Or maybe for you didn't even grow up in a church or with parents that taught you that stuff. You just embraced that on later in life, and embraced the convictions and beliefs that you know to be true and you know to be right. And so you have these convictions and these beliefs, but then you also have these thoughts and these feelings, don't you? And sometimes, if you're like me, your thoughts and your feelings don't always line up with your convictions and your beliefs. In fact, sometimes your convictions and your beliefs are opposite of your thoughts and your feelings. I mean, maybe you're a college student or 20-something, and everyone else your age is just partying their brains out, not caring about tomorrow, living a carefree life, not worrying about where they wake up or who they wake up with, and for you have these convictions, these beliefs that say that type of a lifestyle is wrong, that's not healthy. Maybe for you even say things like, Jesus calls me not to live that way, a higher standard of life. But then you also have these thoughts and these feelings that say otherwise, don't you? And you begin to wonder, why am I resisting that? I mean, all my other friends are doing it. They're having fun. They're enjoying life. Why am I resisting it? And you begin to even wonder if your convictions and your beliefs are even worth it. And in fact, you begin to wonder if following Jesus and the way that he says to live life is even worth it. Or maybe for you, you have these convictions and these beliefs that God loves you and cares about you, that he listens to you, and that you can pray to God, and that you can hear, or he'll hear you. And you've been praying to God for a while now. And it seems like everybody else's prayers are getting answered except for yours. And the marriage that you're in is still struggling. The marriage that you've been praying about for a while now It's barely holding on, and you begin to wonder, I don't know how much longer I can last. I'm about to throw in the towel and walk away and give up on everything. The person that you care about so much, that you've been praying for, still has cancer. In fact, they're not getting better, they're getting worse. The addiction that you have is still there, and it's still real, and it's still painful. The one that you thought was the one ended up breaking your heart and leaving you and not being the one. And you begin to wonder, are my convictions, are my beliefs, are they even true? Are they even right? In fact, you begin to wonder if Jesus is even true in all the things that he says, and God and the Bible. Is it even true? Is it even right? And doubt begins to set in. And we have these convictions and these beliefs, but then we also have these thoughts and these feelings that kind of pull us the other way. And there are the things that we know to do, right? But then there are the things that we want to do. There are the things that we know to be true, but currently we're doubting all of it. What used to be so easy to believe is now so hard. What used to be so concrete and so certain is now so muddy and messy, and you're so unsure. And the convictions and the beliefs that you have are just different than your thoughts and your feelings. Are you with me? Do you feel that tension that we have these thoughts and these feelings, but we also have these convictions and these beliefs, and in the middle is the tension, is the questions, is the mess, is the uncertainty. In the middle is the doubt that we have. Can you feel it? And in fact, to make sure that I'm not the only one, I want you to raise your hand if you feel that tension, if you have the doubt. Be honest. Now raise it up. Be honest. Now keep it up. Now everyone else look around really quick. See, you're not the only one. See? And you thought you were the only one that had the doubt, but you're not. And I don't know about you, but sometimes I feel like I'm the only one that has the doubt. I'm the only one that has some questions. And in fact, this past Monday night, I ended up in my backyard with 3 other people, and we were sitting on some lawn chairs for a couple of hours, and it was one of those things that just happened. I didn't plan to hang out with anyone, but 3 other people and myself ended up in our backyard talking for a couple of hours, and it was just this real honest conversation about life, about purpose, about spirituality, about God, about our struggles. And in the midst of that conversation was some doubt, was some uncertainty, was some questions. And I began to smile inside in the midst of this conversation, because here were 3 other people who I respect and who follow Jesus, and even they don't have it all figured out. I mean, even they experience the convictions and the beliefs, but yet and then they also have these thoughts and these feelings that don't line up. I mean, even they have the tension of questions and uncertainty and go through doubt. And I thought to myself, you mean I'm not the only one? You mean you're with me on this one? And I felt kind of free inside. And in fact, that we're kind of in this all together, that maybe you've doubted before, maybe you're in the midst of doubt, or you're going to doubt again. And so the question isn't, will we have doubt? Because we're in this all together as a community, as a group of people. I think the question for me and for you, and really where I want to explore this morning is what do we do with our doubt? When we're in the midst of our doubt, what do we do with it? How do we move forward? How do we continue to live life? And thankfully for me and for you, the Bible actually talks a great deal about doubt. In fact, in Matthew 11, where we're going to head this morning, it helps us out tremendously. But before we get into the text, I want to give you a little context of the story that we're headed to. So it starts out 74 BC, a couple thousand years ago. There's this guy named Herod, and Herod is born. And you probably know of Herod. You've read about him, history class or whatever. Herod is born, and Herod is a Roman guy. and he works for Rome. And eventually, Rome puts him in charge of the Palestine area, which is basically what we know today as Israel. Okay, and so Herod is king of the Jews, a ruler of the Jews, and his job is to basically collect taxes and to make money and send it back to Rome. And as long as he does that, Rome's happy, which means he's happy. And Herod was one jacked up dude, and like he was messed up. In fact, secular historians would say that somewhere in his life he literally went insane and never snapped out of it. I mean, to give you a little glimpse into him and his thinking, he had his wife killed, he had 3 of his kids killed, and he even killed his mother-in-law, which some of you've thought of that, right? But I mean, Herod, he actually did it. He actually crossed the line. He was a mad man, and no one liked Herod. And in fact, at one point in his rulership, he gets word that there's this baby boy that's born, and it's going to become king of the Jews. And so he gets scared, and he doesn't like that. And so he has all of his guys kill every boy 2 years and younger. Messed up, and no one likes him. And in fact, when he's about to die, he knows he's going to die pretty soon. He knows that the hour that he dies, everyone's going to be having a street party. Everyone's going to be so happy he's gone. And so he has some of his soldiers collect some key Jewish figures, and he puts the leaders, the Jewish leaders, into prison. And he tells his top commander that the hour that I die, I want you to kill all of these Jewish leaders. Because I don't want there to be a street party when I die. I want there to be a street mourning. And so Herod actually eventually dies, and his top commander, the hour that he dies, he lets go of all of the Jewish leaders, and there's not a mourning, there's a street party, because ding dong Herod, the wicked old Herod, is finally dead. But before Herod dies, he does something a little bit strange. He splits his kingdom into thirds. Because, see, Herod doesn't want one person to have as much power as he had. And so he splits it into thirds, and he gives it to 3 of his sons. And one of his sons, named Herod Antipas, who's a key guy in the story that we're looking at this morning, he gets the area or the rulership of Galilee, which is also the area in which Jesus grew up in. And so we have Herod Antipas. And then we also have this guy named Herod Philip, who was another one of his sons. And this is where the story gets confusing, so just stick with me. It's a little bit of a soap opera, as you'll see. So we have Herod Philip. And Herod Philip is the brother of Herod Antipas. And Herod Philip ends up marrying his niece, named Herodias, which is not cool, right? And so he marries his niece, which is also Herod Antipas's niece as well. And Herodias evidently was quite the knockout. She was good looking, because Herod Antipas gets jealous of his brother Herod Philip. In fact, so jealous that he would go in and visit Herodias and Herod Philip often. And eventually he talked Herodias to moving back to Galilee with him and to moving in with him, and they end up getting married. So I don't know about your family, but like that's not cool with my family, right? Like to Herod Antipas marries his sister-in-law, which is his brother's wife, which is also his niece. Like that is not okay, and that especially was not okay in the Jewish culture. You did not marry your brother's wife unless your brother was dead, and then you'd marry her to take care of her. So kind of a scandalous thing going on. So Herod Antipas and Herodias are in Galilee. And then there's this other guy in Galilee also, and his name is John. And John was a follower of Jesus, and not only was he a follower of Jesus, but he was a preacher. And not only was he a preacher, but he was the cousin of Jesus. And he was a key player with God, what God was up to at that time. And John was one of those powerful communicators. One of those guys, you would listen to him and you just gravitate towards him. He was just really captivating and a super bold guy in his teaching. And in fact, his whole message was repent, 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 for Jesus is coming. Turn away from your brokenness, for the Lamb of God is here. Like that was his whole message. And he wasn't afraid of offending people. He just would call people out and call things how they were. And so he hears that Herod Antipas, the ruler of his area, marries his brother's wife. And so he begins to call out Herod Antipas for marrying his brother's wife. He yell at him, "You married your brother's wife, you married your brother's wife." And he began to call out Herodias, "You married your husband's brother, that's not okay." And Herod Antipas, of course, doesn't like that very much, but he has this fascination with John. In fact, he has respect for John. In fact, so much so that he kind of thought it was funny that John was calling him out on it, kind of. And in fact, so much so that he'd go and listen to John teach. However, Herodias despised John, hated John with a passion, and finally talked Herod Antipas to throwing John into prison and get him off the street so that way he stopped calling them out. And so in Mark 6:17 is where the story picks up. It says, "For Herod himself had given orders to have John arrested. He had him bound and put in prison. He did this because of Herodias," which, by the way, that is like a horrible name, right? Like horrific. Herodias, hey, kind of matches. Any tangent. Anyways, he did this because of Herodias, his brother Philip's wife, whom he had married. For John had been saying to Herod, "It is not lawful for you to have your brother's wife." Like, it's not okay, Herod. Like, that's not cool to have your brother's wife, because Herod feared John and protected him, knowing him to be a righteous and holy man. When Herod heard John, he was greatly puzzled. Herod was fascinated with John, yet he liked to listen to him. And so now this is where the story gets really practical for me and for you, and I think we can relate a great deal, because now all of a sudden, John, the preacher, the cousin of Jesus, is in prison. John, the guy that would preach to people and tell people that Jesus is the Messiah, is now all of a sudden in prison. John is now out of his element. And once John is in prison, John begins to have second thoughts about his life. And in fact, John begins to have second thoughts about what he's been doing with his life. And I can imagine that John, being in prison, begins to get overwhelmed and stressed out. And while John's in prison, John begins to doubt about some of his convictions and his beliefs. And one day, some of John's guys come and visit him. And I don't know the context of it, if they actually got to go inside and see John, or if they were whispering through some bars or a little hole. I don't know. But John's guys, they're talking, and John talks his guys into going back to Jesus and giving Jesus a message, because John has this burning question for Jesus. And John needs to know the answer from Jesus. And so this is the question that John has for Jesus in Matthew 2, or Matthew 11, verse 2. It says, "When John, who was in prison, heard about the deeds of the Messiah, he sent his disciples to ask him, 'Are you the one who is to come, or should we expect someone else?'" So John had his guys ask Jesus if Jesus was the one. John wanted to know if Jesus was the Messiah. John, the guy who told people that Jesus was the Messiah, now wants to know if Jesus is actually the Messiah. John begins to doubt. John begins to have these thoughts and these feelings that don't line up with his convictions and his beliefs. That John, the guy who baptized Jesus, John, the guy who told people that Jesus was the Lamb of God, John, the guy who saw Jesus do miracles, is now doubting that Jesus is actually the Messiah. And I don't know about you, but John doubting helps me out a great deal. Because, think about it. If there's anyone that shouldn't have doubted, wouldn't have it been John? The cousin of Jesus, John, the guy who baptized Jesus, John, the guy who came before Jesus to tell people about Jesus. Wouldn't have it been him that shouldn't have doubted? But even John doubts. See, I think there's this myth that if you follow Jesus, then you shouldn't doubt. I think the church sometimes paints this ugly, this gross picture that if you follow Jesus and if you follow him well, and if you're a good Christian, then you're not going to doubt. And that your convictions and your beliefs will always line up with your thoughts and your feelings, and that you'll never experience the tension, you'll never have questions, that you'll have it all figured out. But when you open the pages of the text, you see followers of Jesus experiencing the same thing as you and me. You see followers of Jesus that have these convictions and these beliefs, but then they also have these thoughts and these feelings. You see followers of Jesus that have the same tension that you and I do, that the questions, the uncertainty, the mess, the struggle, the doubt. You see followers of Jesus going through the same stages of doubt as you and I. And so John's guys, they go back to Jesus and they ask Jesus John's question. And I imagine that they have kind of a tough time asking Jesus the question. I imagine they go to Jesus and they're like, "Hey, Jesus, so we just got done talking with John. You know John? John, your cousin?" Jesus is like, "Yeah, I know John, my cousin. Yeah, I know him. Yeah, so we just got back talking to him, and he's in prison. Don't know if you know, but he's in prison." Jesus, "Yeah, no, he's in prison. Yeah, okay. Hey, so John has this question that he wants us to ask you. Okay, ask me the question. Okay, John wants to know if you're the one, if you're the Messiah. John wants to know if you're the Lamb of God. John wants to know if you're the one to redeem all of humanity. John wants to know if you're the one that we've been waiting for hundreds of years now. John wants to know if he actually went to prison for a purpose, for a reason, or if John's life has just been useless. John wants to know if you're the Messiah." To which Jesus replies, and what Jesus replies with, I think, is a little bit frustrating for me and for you. And I imagine it was frustrating for John, because Jesus doesn't reply back with like, "Oh, really? John's doubting? Let's go break him out of prison tonight. Then he won't doubt," which would have been awesome, right? And John would have been like, "Hey, thanks, Jesus." But Jesus didn't do that. In fact, Jesus doesn't even give John a purpose or a reason of why he's in prison. He doesn't give Jesus really any answers, which I don't know about you, but when I'm in the midst of doubt and struggle and have questions, I just want to know some answers. I want to know a purpose to why I'm struggling so I can get out of the doubt. But instead, Jesus responds with this. He says, "Go back and report to John what you hear and see." To which, again, I imagine John's guys are like, "Okay, got it, Jesus. We'll go back and tell John what we hear and see." But Jesus, John wants to know if you're the one, if you're the Messiah. And Jesus is like, "Go back and tell John what you hear and see." And John's guys are like, No, Jesus. John wants to know if you're the one. If you're the Messiah, if you're the one to redeem all of humanity, if you're the one we've been waiting for, if you're the one that was prophesied about. Jesus is like, "Go tell John what you hear, what you see." And I think this next part is key. And a lot smarter people than me figured this out, that I was able to catch on to and thankful for it. But see, what Jesus doesn't want is John to fasten his faith and his hope to what's happening to him. What Jesus doesn't want is John to fasten his faith and his hope to his current circumstances. But Jesus wants John to fasten his faith and his hope to what's happening around him. But because, see, when John would hear and see what's happening around him, his faith and his hope would rise. See, when John would hear that the blind receive sight, the lame walk, those who have leprosy are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the good news is proclaimed to the poor, John would realize that God is still active and that God is still at work, and that even though John's in the midst of doubt and questions and uncertainty and a low spot in his life, that God is still the God of the living, that God is still redeeming humanity. So the question for me and for you isn't will we doubt, right? Because, I mean, even John, the cousin of Jesus, doubted. And so isn't the question for me and for you, okay, what do we do when we're in the midst of doubt? How do we go about life as individuals, as a group, as a community? How do we handle our doubt? And I think the text suggests a couple of things that I want to explore with you this morning that I'm learning to do. First thing, in the midst of your doubt, you need to doubt your doubt. I love how Rob Bell says it. He says, when we're in doubt, we need to judo our doubt, or Rambo it, Chuck Norris it, Jason Bourne it, whatever so violence you so choose. You need to doubt your doubt. And really that you need to get your doubt into the open, and that you need to name your doubt, name the thoughts and the feelings that you have. What are the questions, and hold them up to the light. But because, see, one of the worst things that we can do is just to let the doubt linger there. Let it just hang out and let it manifest in us. That we need to be honest with ourselves about the doubt that we have. And also, we need to be honest with other people about the doubt that we have. And I think this one is, I know it's tough for me, it might be tough for you, but I'm afraid of getting criticized or judged when I talk to people about my doubt, about some of the questions that I have. I'm afraid that if people find out that, I have questions, that they're going to think that I can't be a follower of Jesus, that they're not going to respect me anymore, and they're going to think less of me. And what attracted me to Narrate 5 years ago, as someone that just attended, that was sitting where you were sitting at today, was Narrate's willingness to say that Narrate doesn't have it all figured out. Narrate doesn't have all the answers to all the questions. But what attracted me to Narrate 5 years ago was Narrate's willingness to listen to some of my doubt and some of my questions and some of my reservations and some of my uncertainty, and kind of have them wrap their arms around me and say, hey, we do too. And it's okay, you're still accepted here. Let's doubt our doubts together. And for you to know that Narrate is a safe place for you to doubt, that it's okay that you have doubt. We do too. You're still accepted. You're still welcome. And that we want to doubt our doubts together. That's why we love grabbing lunches and coffee with people and begin to navigate life with them, and that you need to find a safe and authentic community to be honest with your doubts and with your questions. And then secondly, in the midst of our doubts, you need to look back at God's past activity in your life. I think all too often, I know me, I have a tendency when I'm struggling, when I'm in the midst of doubt, I just think of the current circumstances in the moment, and I totally forget about God's past activity in my life. I totally forget what God's done in my life, and to remember God's presence and your past with your son or your daughter, maybe your health or your finances, a relationship that God walked you through. And then thirdly, and this next one, I've been trying to do a lot of lately, and it's been helping out. In the midst of your doubt, look at God's activity around you. And to remember that I am just one person, you are just one person of millions of people. And that for thousands of years, God has been at work in people's lives. For thousands of years, God's been inviting people to think differently, and he's been redeeming humanity. And that he's at work around you. That's why when you want to get baptized, and we want you to, and that's why we push you to do a baptism video. And for you just think of you, right? You think of how, the camera's going to make you look fat, and how the camera's going to change your hair color, and everyone's going to think you have horrible hair color choice, and how many times you're going to say the and the like words, and how no one's going to like your story. And we get that. We understand that. Like, it's scary being filmed. But for me, and for everyone else, when we hear your story for the first time, we're reminded that God is still active, and that God is still working, and that God is still redeeming humanity, and that God is still full of grace and full of redemption, and God is the God that can be trusted. That we're reminded that even though we're in the midst of our low spot, we get to hear your story, and we can see God at work. And then lastly, in the midst of your doubt, you need to look towards the future of what can and should be. In the midst of our doubt, we're just focused on the moment, but we need to remember and believe that history is headed somewhere. There's actually a purpose of today and history, and that Jesus invites people to think differently, and he invites them into relationships with him, and that he'll continue to do that tomorrow and the next day, and that history is headed towards the renewal of all things. And so then I want to wrap up with this one thing that Jesus finishes telling John, and I think this is encouraging. So Jesus tells John's guys to tell John this. He says in verse 6, "Blessed is anyone who does not stumble on account of me." Blessed, 110% extra credit to you if you don't give up, if you don't lose faith, if you don't lose hope because of the things that I do. A plus extra credit to you if you don't lose faith, if you don't lose hope, because you're going through a tough time, because you're struggling, but because you have some doubt. And see, evidently, John didn't lose faith. He didn't lose hope. Even though he had doubt, he still pursued Jesus, because a couple verses later, Jesus says this, "Truly, I tell you, among those born of women," so that's me and you. Thank you, women, by the way. We appreciate that. "There has not risen anyone greater than John the Baptist." But wait, Jesus, John doubted. But wait, Jesus, John was a doubter. Wait, John doubted just like you and I do. Wait, but you're calling him blessed? You're calling him, no one's ever lived as great as he has? But John didn't have it all figured out. But wait, Jesus, John had these convictions and these beliefs, but he also had these thoughts and these feelings that didn't line up. Wait, so does that mean that we can still follow Jesus even though we have some doubt? Does that mean that Jesus doesn't kick us out if we're struggling, if we have some questions, if we're unclear about some things? Wait, so does that mean that Jesus still loves us in the midst of the tension, in the midst of the doubt? I think so, because John doubted. And Jesus says that John was the greatest that has ever lived. Jesus said that John was a blessed person. Kind of hopeful for me and for you, right? So the question isn't, will we doubt? Because we will doubt. The question that I want to leave you with this morning, that I'm going to continue to wrestle with, I think, the rest of my life, is what do I do in the midst of my doubt? What do you do in the midst of your doubt? Will you doubt your doubt? Will you remember God's past activity in your life? Will you look around you, and will you look towards the future? So I don't know where this lands for you this morning. Some of you've been following Jesus for a while now, and you have these convictions and these beliefs that at one time you knew to be true and you knew to be right, but currently you're kind of over here with some thoughts and these feelings that just don't line up, and you're just all over the place. My hope and my prayer for you is that you would doubt your doubt, and that you would know that you're not alone, and that you would know that I'm not praying for you, I'm praying with you, because I get where you're coming at. That you would know you are not alone in the tension and the low spot in your life, and that you would know that Narrate is a safe place for you not to have it all figured out and have some doubt, and that you're still accepted and you're still welcome, and we wrap our arms around you and say, okay, let's navigate this together. Let's pursue Jesus together. Maybe for some of you, you're kind of here by accident. Someone cute invited you, or, someone's been nagging on you for a while now to come, so you finally came. And for you have no desire to follow Jesus, because for you have so many questions about God and church and religion, and you're like, I just have too many questions. There's no way I can follow Jesus. I have good news and bad news for you. The bad news is that you'll never have it all figured out. You'll never get there. But the good news is that even in the midst of your questions and your doubt, you can still follow Jesus. Because remember John doubted, John had questions, John didn't have it all figured out, and John was a follower of Jesus, and John was a blessed person. So my hope and my prayer for you is that you would know that you're not alone, and you would know that this is a safe place for you to have doubt. And my hope and prayer for you is that you would know that no matter what you've done, where you've come from, what you haven't done, is that Jesus invites you to begin to think differently. And that God is not offended or even insecure about your questions and your doubt, that it's okay. So hold the doubt and the light, get them out there, start naming them. Talk to people about it, and that you would know that Jesus, he died for you, and he desires to enter into a personal relationship with you and walk life with you, even in the midst of your doubt and your questions.
If you would like to engage further with Narrate Church, you can find contact information online, www.narratechurch.org. We would love to hear from you.